Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's edition of the Gamut Network. As I just found out, I have a young woman on the show today whose stomping grounds are very similar to mine in terms of where she grew up, in terms of where I go in the summer. So it's so fun to have that connection, and I am as eager as you guys are to hear about her story. So with that, I'd like to welcome Melanie to the show. Hi, Melanie.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I am just as happy to have you. So you have a very interesting story that I'm going to have a lot of questions about, I'm sure.
Sure.
But before I dive in, I would love everybody to hear just tell us about how you grew up. Tell us the story of Melanie.
Sure. So I grew up in Jersey, and my mom was from Philly. I've always really loved big city New York. And I think from the time that I was a little kid, I knew that I always wanted to be an actor just because we're in such a metropolis area. So I always wanted to do that and decided that I wanted to go to school for that. I went to Rutgers, got my BA in theater and journalism. And right after I graduated, boom, went to work in Walt Disney World, where, it was a dream. I got to work as a pirate master. It was like the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, but you would do pirate makeovers, ironically. I know, yeah, it was really fun.
True. Wait, you were doing the makeovers or you were a pirate?
Both.
That sounds heaven.
It was, you were considered both entertainment and a part of just being somebody who worked in Walt Disney World, and, you know, getting to wake up and go to work every day in Magic Kingdom was just amazing. And while I was living there, I actually started seeing rheumatologists because I started showing symptoms of cramping in my joints, and my muscles would get really fatigued. I was working 8 hours a day doing pirate makeovers, and then I would end work just in time to go see the fireworks. And it was beautiful. It was great, but I was starting to wear myself thin. So I started seeing a rheumatologist, and 4 months into working at Disney World, I was diagnosed with lupus. And about a month after my diagnosis, I had my amputation, which we knew about going into, which was nice because it wasn't as much of a surprise as most people would think. So
can you share just one after another audience a little bit about lupus, what it is, how it affects the body, etc.?
Sure. So we always knew, my parents and I, that I might have something related to RA. My mom has RA. She's considered a CREST patient. So I always knew growing up, you know, I had knees that were kind of achy always, but nothing ever so severe as what I started to have when I was living in Florida. And when that showed up, it was in my muscles. My joints would swell, turn red and hot. I started to deal with chronic fatigue a lot, which I hadn't dealt with before that. So there was a huge shift in what it took for me to take care of myself and learn about myself in that time. Even though my condition was kind of slumping, it was a lot to handle, and, you know, going to live on my own and living away from my parents. I think they definitely had a hard time with that, learning my diagnosis. But my lupus affects my heart, my lungs. It can affect pretty much any organ in the body. And it's different from person to person. But I think mine is mostly under control right now. So I'm happy about that. It's a lot to deal with, like I said. So I
would imagine. So you're in your early 20s when you lived in Disney World. Yeah.
Yes.
And you have like the job of your dreams right now at this stage of your life, having the time of your life, and boom, you're diagnosed with lupus. And then shortly after that, boom, you experience a limb difference.
Yes. So I was given a blood thinner medication called heparin. And what happened was I had a severe and very rare reaction to that medication they gave me. So there really isn't, they never really found a correlation between lupus and my amputation. It was mostly the reaction that I had to the medication they gave me, heparin-induced thrombocytopenia.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now, can you give us a little insight on emotionally? What was this like for you at this age, at this stage of your life? Suddenly you go from having, two limbs to one and a half.
Yeah.
What was this like for you?
It's hard for me to remember what that period of my life was like, being I was in 3 ICUs, and it just was one thing after another on medications. I kind of wasn't really all there some days. And it was nice though, because my parents actually flew down to be with me. So I had their support. They were with me through the whole process. And, there was a lot to learn about becoming limb different. And I learned a lot about myself as far as mindfulness goes. I started seeing a therapist while in the hospital, and that actually then created a huge shift in my life, because I don't know if you knew this, but I'm now a yoga teacher because of all that.
And I can't wait to hear about the enormous amount of people you taught yoga to.
Yeah. So that was a huge influence. Yeah. That was a huge influence on why I decided to get into that, because I learned a lot about mindfulness through the process. And, in talking to this therapist, I decided to choose to focus on how grateful I was that instead of losing a limb, losing a part of me, that I was really grateful to still make it out on the other side. And to this day, that's something I carry with me every day.
I love that. And so it was kind of shifting your thought process.
Yes, absolutely.
Rather than focus on what you didn't have, you were focusing on what you have, which
absolutely
sounds like your life based on you were in the ICU three in a row. And I think that's something that it's so important to focus on, because this is an interesting theme that I've had with other guests, that my son was born with his disability, so he doesn't know another way of life. He good or bad, doesn't know what it's like to run, doesn't know, what it's like to really play sports or athletics or anything like that. So, I often wonder, does that make it easier? Does that make it more difficult? When you don't know what you don't know, sometimes it's a little easier. But I think in your case and many of the other stories that we've had, I think that has got to be something that, thankfully you started with therapy to really not go down the rabbit hole of what I have. And now that, we're about to hear what you do have and all the amazing things that have opened up in your life, thankfully, because you didn't go down that rabbit hole, is
for sure
what I want everybody to really, hear right now from you. You had a choice, right? You had a choice at that point.
I have a choice. We all have a choice every single day.
Yeah. You're going to go in. So amazing that you had the foresight to really focus on what you can do. So take us from that point of what happened post this new Melanie.
So right after my amputation, I was actually in the hospital for about 30 days. And it's kind of funny because now we're in a time of quarantine, and sure, we all struggle, but it seems very reminiscent of that time that I had to heal.
I would imagine. So you're more experienced than the typical person.
A little bit. Sometimes I hear a lot of people struggle with it, and I'm like, it's okay. There could be things that happen. There's worse things. So yeah, it's kind of funny. But anyway, I left the hospital, moved back home with my parents, and I kind of just decided to, go back to work, figure out what did work for me, what didn't. My lupus was okay at this point. And then I think about 2 years later, I decided to start my yoga practice again. And I was really afraid of that at first, because I've been doing yoga for about 15 years. And, in 2013, to have this whole different shift in my life, shift in the way that my body was and is now, it was really scary and terrifying for me to think of, okay, well, I want to do yoga, but what if I go in the studio? This whole laundry list of fears just kind of washed over me. And it almost deterred me from starting my practice again. But I was very lucky that a local studio, the owner, knew that I loved yoga and that I really wanted to get back in my body, she gave me a private one-on-one session with an OT who was a yoga teacher there. And that just like that one time has now completely transformed my life again. And now I'm in the yoga.
It gave you the confidence, it gave you the reassurance that you could do this.
Yes. And it's all about that opportunity that, a lot of people with disabilities are fearful of in trying to start something athletic or something physical where they're not used to their body being seen typically in these roles. And I think it's kind of like yoga in my life is attached to my acting side of my life, because
I think that's a common thread right there.
It is. It's really funny.
Trying to rebrand the way people with disabilities are viewed, and especially in the public eye.
Absolutely. And there's only a few people who are amputees that I know that teach yoga. There are, people with disabilities who teach as well. I got my certification first in 2000 in teaching what's called Baptiste yoga. That's power yoga, hot yoga.
Mm-hmm.
And last year I got my certification to teach accessible yoga, which is yoga for all body types.
Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing.
I love it.
So now you're majorly teaching the yoga again. Can you tell us about the experience that you had at the camp?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So 2 years ago, I started volunteering for the Amputee Coalition of America's Amputee Camp. And that was the most surreal moment of my life, because I grew up being a camp counselor in Margate in New Jersey, and my whole life was centered around going to camp. I've always loved camp, but camp was great. But when I lost my arm, I actually went back to camp and found that a lot of the kids who were able-bodied, who had never dealt with somebody with a disability, were really fearful to approach me, would just ask me random questions all the time. And it really affected me almost negatively. And, it made me not want to go back to camp. So when I was asked to do Amputee Coalition, I was like, okay, this could be good, because it's going to be a safe space. And the very first day I went in, and 3 kids came right up to me and asked me about myself, where I was from. And I was like, it was shocking. I belonged again. And it just gave me so much confidence to want to be there as a role model for these kids, because they really feel it. They really can know that I can trust this person because we have this shared experience, regardless of whether my disability is acquired or not. And that was another fear, was, well, what if the kids who were born this way see me as something different? No, it really didn't matter. And it's just been such a beautiful thing to get to do every year. So I'm really excited that I get to be a part of that.
I love that. And you're teaching yoga there.
Yes, last year was my first year teaching yoga, and the kids and counselors, it makes me all teary-eyed thinking of it. But some of the counselors even said what I was talking about before was, that fear of not wanting to go into a workout studio or a gym because you'll be stared at. And one of the counselors last year told me, I don't think I ever would have thought to go into a yoga studio before, and now I want to after one class. That was it. That was all it took. So it changed my life. It gives me chills, like thinking about it. It just really motivated me to want to keep going forward in teaching yoga for all body types. Absolutely.
And, there's something so interesting about what you just brought up that I just want to spend a minute on, and then
Sure.
I have time to talk about your acting career. Is, myself included, because I've, dedicated my whole world to, first in fashion, to include people with disabilities, and now with the Gamut Network and Gamut itself, to really have people with disabilities involved in our mainstream world and mainstream media and entertainment and all of that. But something you just said is so important, that it's a catch-22, in that we want so much people with disabilities to be integrated into our mainstream world. But there's something beautiful and very wonderful about having the community together of people with limb differences, like you just experienced at being at the camp. I mean, again, Oliver, my son, he goes to typical camp. He goes to camp with my other two kids. He has a shadow that lives with him so that he can manage everything. And he is really the only kid in camp that has any type of disability. And I'm curious, how would he have felt if he went to a camp where everybody was like him?
It's something, yeah.
Mainstream him.
So beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. That I think often, I wonder what his experience would have been like if I went a different direction.
Sure.
So I think it's really, and you know, we had to kind of work both sides, that it's okay to be within your community because that's what makes you feel, you don't have to think sometimes, really, right? You're just a part of something versus, you know, the work to mainstream, which we have to do as well.
Yes.
I can't wait to the day that it all intersects and that
it's coming.
You know,
It's right around the corner. I feel it.
So
I really do. I really feel it. So I'm hoping that day comes sooner. Yeah.
And I'm sure you're experiencing that already with your acting career. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So my acting career was another thing that I picked back up again, went back into after my amputation a couple years later. A friend of mine had started doing something called the Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge. And she not only won, her name is Rachel, and she won Best Actor. She's from the next town over from me and has a leg amputation. So I was like, oh my gosh, we have to sit down and talk. We decided right then and there when we finally met, we wanted to do it. And we started making our own short films. And, you know, suddenly I went from being just an actor to a producer, a writer.
Amazing.
You know, it's been really cool to just kind of put myself in that uncomfortable situation and just go with it. And it's been really great. After the first year, I got my agency to bring me on. I'm with KMR, and that led me to my first role in television, which was on Goliath. And ever since, I've just been picking up roles as an amputee ever since. And it's been really fun. And it's nice that I get to use what I went to school for.
Yes.
And not only that, something that I genuinely enjoy and I like doing, because I think had I not, I went down the marketing route and found out very quickly that was not for me.
Love it. Great.
And I could have spent my whole life doing something I hated, but I think there's something to say for really sticking with your guns and knowing what you are good at and knowing what you enjoy and just doing it to the fullest and just saying a yes for yourself. You know, it's really a huge choice and it makes a difference.
I love that. And so being in the acting world, are you seeing a shift? I mean, I've been fortunate enough to have met and adore Gail Williamson, who's really the pioneer of, you know, including people with disabilities into the world of entertainment. But since you have been more involved, have you seen a change, do you think?
I think I'm still at the beginning stages of my career. I've been doing this for about 3-4 years. I'm still booking roles as an extra, nothing really with lines or nothing really substantial, but not to say that I have not loved the shows and programs I've been in, but I don't know if I've seen a huge shift just yet. I think it's another one of those things that's still coming. And what's nice about the film challenge is that we get to write ourselves into these roles that we wanted to see. And it's so effective. And when we post these videos and send them out into the internet, people have had really good feedback. And it's, amazing. You know, it's beautiful and it's great for motivation and making me want to stick with it.
And where can our viewers see your films?
Oh, that's a great question. Most of them are still on Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge. If you look that up on YouTube, we were last year's finalist and winner for, thank you, Best Awareness Campaign. Yes, my first win, and it was beautiful. They took us to Sony Pictures Lot in Los Angeles, and the ceremony was like, it was so cool. I think Jon Favreau like walked through. Yeah. It was really crazy. And it was, you know, just beautiful to get to be there. Micah Fowler from Speechless presented the award, who's another Jersey boy. Yeah. So we went in.
We're turning out a lot of very important people.
We are. And I love it. I love being from Jersey. We speak our minds, but it's a great little place to be from.
Yes.
But yeah, so writing myself in those roles is definitely where I see a shift.
They can go to the Easter Seals YouTube. And how about if people want to get in touch with you, how can they best find you?
Sure. So for yoga, I have an email. It's info.whereswaldman. It's all one word, info.whereswaldman@gmail. And you can find me on social media. Where's Waldman is my handle for that. And for acting, I have a different handle. That's my stage name, and it's Melanie Rivera Waldman.
Love it.
I
think it's amazing. I cannot wait to see what you accomplish.
Thank you.
I can't wait to be sitting in a movie theater, just sitting in a movie theater again and seeing.
Oh, in general.
Right? So before we go, I'd like to ask all of my guests one final question, and that's about the power of a vision board. Being a yogi and practicing mindfulness, I'm sure you know what I'm speaking about, the power of believing in what you can make happen. I certainly keep everything that I believe is going to happen in my life right by me at all times, and I'm constantly adding to it, and believe that it will happen. What or who would be on your vision board?
Okay, so I think definitely I would have Runway of Dreams on there and participating in the future, if and when we can be in the physical space together again.
Don't worry.
We'll get there. I think next after that is to get to wear Christian Siriano. He's one of my favorite designers. Right now, he you probably seen, he shifted his whole company to start making masks. And it's like, if I didn't love him enough before this, just like puts him right on my vision board, right up there. And then I wrote some other things down because I knew that this was a question. But public speaking, I haven't gotten into that yet. So I think that's definitely in my goals for the future.
I love that. And you would be a wonderful public speaker, especially with your acting background and your story. This could be, you could be practicing right now. Talk on your YouTube channel. That's how a lot of, public speakers are found by people searching on YouTube.
Absolutely. I love vlogging. I think that's a really great way for people to get to see you. And I love blogging as well, but vlogging is, you get that feeling and the emotion of like where people are in their life. Absolutely. So I love doing that.
Good. I think you're going to be incredible in all of the above. And it's such a joy to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great. This is lovely to get to have a change in quarantine.
I'm so grateful for this. This is like after this interview, I've got to go back to teaching 4th grade. So,
oh wow!
By the way, I'm horrible at. So this is really
I feel that
part of my day.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been so fun.
Love it. If you would like to be on the Gamut Network, please email us at talent@gamutmanagement.com to tell us why you'd be a great guest. Please make sure to like us on all of our social channels at Gamut Management, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Gamut Network. Thank you again.
Thanks again. Bye.